Hi guys, my name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and I have a beef. The beef with is a gentleman named Rob Noerr. He's incredibly annoying. Every time we ever talk about politics, he's just like, hey, Connor, you're bad for working with Democrats in order to fight MAGA. However, Rob Noerr recently went on stream and said that he was sad and ashamed that he had principles in reference to the First Amendment. Pisco did an okay video. The opening's a little long, but that's okay. He did an okay video breaking down Rob Noerr. And so what I want to do in response is I want to draw out all of Rob Noerr's criticism, show how it's fucking bullshit, show how he's a dumbass, show how he doesn't understand conservative philosophy in the fucking slightest. And we're going to use Pisco as a backdrop. And just because I'm an a-hole, I need to use the restroom. So I'm going to come back in 2 minutes and I'm going to let Pisco take it away for you.
In canceling Jimmy Kimmel is hypocritical. We talk about free speech, and then when someone says something we don't like, we cancel them. And I don't give a fuck. You. It's hypocritical. We're hypocritical. This is a fucking war.
That is 100% the right attitude to have.
It is 100% the right attitude to have to be a hypocrite. So Rob just told you, you can't trust a word he says.
I have my feelings. I have my feelings of saying I didn't like the FCC doing that, or I didn't like this thing, or I didn't like that thing. But why does that matter at this point? Who cares? Fuck you.
In other words, he's literally a government bootlicking shill. He's admitted it to you.
I'm not going to worry about living up to my rule book anymore.
So an open admission. I'm not going to worry about whether I'm consistent or not. Hey, folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description. We have some Rob Noerr content to consume, folks. Do you know who Rob is? Do you know the Rob Noerr lore? Well, Rob Noerr, he's a streamer. He's also a guy, good friends with Andrew Wilson. They work together or whatever. And he also is this kind of debate guy. And we've had many different run-ins. Most recently, I think, when he was getting clowned on vis-a-vis the term insurrection, that he was trying to accuse me of being a hypocrite and inconsistent when I totally am not. He looked like a fool. You can find that video on my channel. And before that, he was the kind of guy that conservatives would try to point to be like, this guy gets in the weeds. He gets in the weeds. So Rob is the kind of person who just consumes John Solomon slop. People like Miranda Devine, these kind of idiots and propagandist shills who put out what appear to be or purport to be analysis of firsthand sources, of investigative reports, and they kind of summarize it and have some bullshit narrative. So he's a big believer in the kind of Burisma hoax. He's a big believer in the Russia hoax. He's a big believer in all of these different.
Some of this is cringe, but I'm not going to bother to call out Pisco on his cringe. So just let it ride.
Threads, you know, the ones related to corruption, alleged corruption at the DOJ, the ones, so for example, he's very, very big into the notion that the worst political crisis that ever occurred was the defective FISA warrants sought on Carter Page, which, by the way, were sought on Carter Page, who was a water boy for the Trump campaign, then existing Trump campaign, after he was no longer affiliated with the Trump campaign, and he uses this as like his defining cause are these warrants. In addition, one of his main subjects is alleged politicization of the DOJ under Democrats. He has a lot to say about different alleged Democratic double standards. The key to understanding, though, Rob's main, what I would call central flaw, is his desire and insistence upon not deploying any standard for anything. He just wants to claim to be, well, until now, as we'll see, the consistent one, because he doesn't ever want to apply a standard to anyone on anything.
Yep. Rob lost it. Just stopped caring about principle and was laughing about it on his stream.
Pretty much. I'll give you some examples. He doesn't want to create a standard for when it's okay to go after people for classified information, for mishandling of national defense information. Because to him, every single case of national defense information mishandling, classified documents mishandling, they're all the same.
Listen, he repeats some of this stuff, so I'm going to fast forward to where he's actually reacting to Rob, because truth be told, Pisco goes on like a 10-minute like pre-explanation of all of Rob's sins, and I would rather Pisco just cover it while I draw some things. To tell you what I'm going to draw first, And I missed a conservatism in what I call real republicanism. So I might add a circle. But for those of you who are unfamiliar, for those of you who might be new, I identify as a real Republican. I've waffled on this because the Republican Party has abandoned all of its values. I've been looking for the words to articulate this, but there are various kinds of conservatism. And this is why people identify as being right wing, which I'll also explain. But Burkean conservatism, I can explain. Environmental conservatism, neoconservatism, social conservatism, fiscal conservatism. And then I'm going to add on to this constitutional conservatism. That's another one. And in my opinion, MAGA has tried to undermine or destroy every single one of these styles of like philosophical shit. And so I've been accused of being a traitor for working with Democrats who want to preserve the Republic of the United States. Whereas I don't think a single Trump MAGA person can actually successfully defend that Donald Trump or his sycophants haven't betrayed every single one of these philosophies. And so it wasn't me who changed. I didn't change for shit. I'm still living the values that my parents told me. It's you who fucking changed. You're the one who betrayed your values. You're the one who molded yourself into this fucking freakish Frankenstein monster of bullshit in order to sweep for Trump. I didn't change dick. So fuck you is what I have to say in reference to that. So let me go ahead and eat some trail mix and let Pisco entertain you while I start doing my first drawing.
But I actually am sort of ashamed of myself for the other night. I'm ashamed that I came on here last night and I talked about why I disagreed with what the FCC was doing. I said that even though that I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world, I had a problem with it. And I do, and did. I do. I still have a problem with it. I don't like it.
For some background, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, what he's talking about is the FCC chairman explicitly threatening networks, broadcasters, that they better take off.
Lidovex for $10 says, turned into stream as soon as you switch off of Trump. I feel like I timed that perfectly. Excellent.
Jimmy Kimmel, or else there'll be enforcement and fines. In essence, invoking government regulation to stifle speech, which is precisely what a unanimous Supreme Court in case after case after case has said is unacceptable. You can't use the case I'm referring to right now is the Bolo case. You can't use government regulation to disfavor certain speech on purpose. That is a form of viewpoint discrimination that is unacceptable. It's a principle that I've been standing on, and it's one, by the way, that Rob Noerr has invoked improperly to characterize the Twitter files. Now, here's another great example of Rob Noerr having no standards, which is he doesn't want to set out a standard of what government coercion is. Well, what is government coercion? He doesn't want to make a test. He doesn't want to try to encapsulate it or define it, or to have some understanding, right? He just says any kind of government interaction is coercion. So Twitter files the same as this, same as that. That's just another example. But this is a principle that he claimed to hold dear, which is the government using its power to stifle speech it didn't agree with. So much so that he made one of his biggest issues in the 2020 election and post-2020 election. He said the election was stolen because the New York Post was pressured by the government to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story. Now, there are a lot of problems to the predicate there, which is the government didn't censor the New York Post story. The progenitor of the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi, in the Twitter files itself said that was the...
Okay. This is where I feel like I'm the only person being good faith within this conversation. I swear to God. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up my own ass, okay? The whole criticism from the Twitter files, which I guess I align with Rob Noerr on, is that you have Jim Baker, apparently a huge fan of the Counterpoints show, who worked for Twitter, okay? And he worked as like chief counsel for Twitter, and he gave them legal advice, but he was formerly chief counsel of the FBI. And so you effectively had him meeting with FBI agents. You had other employees of Twitter meeting with FBI agents, and they would talk weekly, I believe, about misinformation, disinformation, this, that, the other. And so as a result, they would talk about Russian influence campaigns. They would talk about Chinese influence campaigns. They would talk about election misinformation. They would talk about, what was the other one? election misinformation, they would talk about COVID misinformation. And so for me, I viewed it as a perversion of government interest to not have an antagonistic relationship against the government in reference to the kind of speech you're going to censor. Now, truth be told, I don't care about the Chinese and Russian influence coordination, because I think that foreign governments trying to manipulate American politics is 100% something that falls under national security. So that's something that I don't give a shit about. I think that's an appropriate use of the federal government consulting with social media companies in order to counter foreign disinformation and misinformation campaigns. What I do worry about, though, is with election interference and with COVID misinformation, that there was a pressure in order for social media companies to accommodate the Biden administration's perspective on COVID and Biden administration's perspective on election shit, such that the progressive and liberal narrative was dominant over the conservative narrative. Now, you can say that this is bullshit. You can say that it's small potatoes, who gives a fuck, it's legal, et cetera, et cetera. But the mere perception of what I'm talking about, even if you think that it's bullshit, is what led to the richest man on the planet buying Twitter and turning it into what it is today, which is effectively like a right-wing hellscape. Okay? So even if you think I'm full of shit, even if you think I'm a pussy, even if you think that I shouldn't care about COVID misinformation and election misinformation, quote unquote, this much, you have to understand that this has major national impact. Now, I made a fuss about it back then. I'm going to make a fuss about it kind of now, but I made a friend in Washington, D.C. Her name's Renee DiResta. And Renee was one of the central figures in the Twitter file controversy because she was the head of the Berkeley NGO that reported a vast majority of the terms of service violations to Twitter. To hear her characterize it, and I'm sorry if I'm misquoting her, 90% of what she reported to Twitter was foreign propaganda interference. 1% of it was child pornography, effectively reporting child pornography rings. And by the way, I'm perfectly okay with this. I'm perfectly okay with 91% of what Renee DiResta did. And then with the remaining 9%, she's saying, yes, we sent in reports for terms of service violations in reference to COVID misinformation and election misinformation. However, 90% of what we reported, Twitter never took any action. And not only that, she never met with Jim Baker. So my original conspiracy theory was that the FBI was working with a former FBI employee and NGOs in order to stifle American free speech. But at least according to Renee DiResta, these roles were so siloed that they never interacted. And my fear, while maybe rooted in some like fear of government overreach, what didn't line up with what was realistically happening. Okay. Now compare this to Donald Trump and the FCC chair telling news organizations and comedians that if they do not cover the Trump administration or the Charlie Kirk assassination the way that they want them to, they're going to investigate them for fines and sanctions. Yeah, Trump is 10,000 times worse than what I was bitching about in reference to the Twitter files. So I don't accept from Pisco that the Twitter files are nothing, but I definitely admit that Trump is 10 times worse, 1,000 times worse.
The problem was that there was no government interference, that the government wasn't talking to Twitter about the New York Post story. And there's no evidence whatsoever, and if there was, we would have heard of it, that the government was attempting to censor or pressure or invoke regulatory authority to stifle the Hunter Biden laptop story. So the predicate is all wrong. Notwithstanding that, Rob claims that the 2020 election was in fact stolen.
Tristan Clark says, at what point in the past 20 years do you think the party started sprinting away from your republicanism? The end of the Bush admin. Because the war on terror was so disastrous that nobody wanted to associate with the politics of Bush.
So his position, to be clear, because I've heard him say it multiple times,
Test dummy human is right. Likes are free, boys and girls. Just a friendly reminder. Correct. Like the stream. Share it with your friends. Engage with chat. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. I personally love you for hanging out here. Appreciate you.
Is that the election was stolen in 2020, not through fraud. He says he's only 55% sure that there wasn't fraud, something like that. So he thinks that there probably was voter or he thinks there's a reasonable likelihood, close to 40-ish%, that there was voter fraud. That's what he's said, but just not smoking gun proof. But beyond that, right? He doesn't need that, he says. I don't focus on the voter fraud, even though there's absolutely no good evidence whatsoever that there was dispositive voter fraud or significant voter fraud. Everyone
Zombie Joe, thank you for becoming a member.
find it. He says the election was stolen a different way. The election was stolen because of the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. And then he uses these kind of like garbage polling data to extrapolate things beyond what the polls are intended for. And additionally, where there's a huge danger of sample bias, et cetera, and also where it's not geographically tested, in the sense that the poll is not representative of where geographically the votes would need to come out of. But regardless of that, and I have my own debunk of his argument there, he says the election was stolen because of the Hunter Biden laptop suppression. And so even though it's untrue that there was government suppression, that the government stole the election. Remember, the government that was operated under Donald Trump, this was Trump's DOJ, this was 2020, not 2021. Rob also has a problem with linear time, but it's his contention that the election was stolen from Trump in 2020 because of this kind of government pressure to censor. So even though we know it's false, what he's saying, he is expressing the value is so dear to him that he considers the theft of the 2020 election to be a result of government coercion.
The problem with what Pisco's saying right now is like the shadow campaign. Ooh, baby. No, are there not chopsticks in our drawer? No. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Damn, you actually love me. That's amazing. Thank you. Damn. My wife got me sushi. Amazing. The shadow campaign to stop Trump article. Listen, the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. So here's my frustration with what Pisco's saying, all right? I'm not going to read all this shit because I don't care, all right? The truth is that 99% of what was done here was legal, all right? I don't even know if there's anything criminal alleged in here. And what it says, as far as I know, from a summary of this, was the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. This goes over how NGOs, activists, Democrats, social media companies, terms of service people, all that bullshit, they pulled out the stops in order to defeat Trump in 2020. And so they talk about the information campaign and the information warfare, excuse me, the disinformation defense. They're talking about all the things that a lot of really powerful, rich, influential people did in order to stop Trump from gaining power. Now, the thing about this is that since all of this shit is legal, I don't care, because this is just like democracy. Democracy is fighting for the minds of people. But from Rob Noerr's perspective, this is an unethical breach of power from rich and powerful, manipulative, deep state forces in order to defeat Trump. Okay? So what if I was in Pisco's shoes, because I am most concerned with the truth above like all else, I wouldn't be saying that there was no coordinated campaign to prevent Trump from seizing power. I would say that there was 100% a coordinated campaign from Trump seizing power, but this is indiscernible from actual democracy. It's people of good conscience and goodwill working together to spread their viewpoint within the Republic of the United States to get somebody who they think is disastrous for the nation out of power. That's not an illicit conspiracy. It's just politics.
To basically censor or pressure the deplatforming of certain speech. That's how near and dear.
Landon Stewart says, like, if Twitter wanted to chill speech, we would have saw it in that. Yeah, but guys, like, you understand that they chilled speech in reference to COVID misinformation, right? Now, you can think that's good, but they banned COVID misinformation. If you started saying crazy shit like, yeah, inject yourself with ivermectin, sun your balls in order to cure COVID, then you would get hit with like either a community note or a suspension. And then same thing with election misinformation. They wouldn't, I think the main thing that they banned was people lying about how to register to vote and lying about voting locations. I think that's the main thing that they banned. And again, you can say that's good. But one of the cases that was brought up was there was a Republican who I think he either got sued civilly or found criminally guilty of doing election misinformation. But what he did is he changed he did a poster for like a local election, and he posted it, I think, on Twitter, and he pushed the date to after the election. And then I think he did another one where he said that you could vote by text message. And then I think he did another one where he changed the location of a voting booth within like a region or something like that. And so as a result, the government said that actually we have a law in the books where you can't spread false information knowingly trying to prevent other people from voting. And that's what he got hit with. Now, you can say that that is good, but you cannot say that they were not trying to chill or eliminate that kind of speech. So
this issue is to Rob's heart. And what Rob is saying right now in the context of the FCC threatening broadcasters and threatening ABC specifically,
is more important than mine
off the air, you would think under his previous principles, this would be a huge no-no for Rob.
It is a huge no-no.
Horrible. How can you use the invocation of regulatory authority of the federal government to pressure private actors? You would think this is like central
in reference to free and protected speech. Yes, it should be alarming.
Someone who has called out this kind of shit, what he perceived, falsely, on the left. And what you have right now is him apologizing for saying that was wrong, right? He's saying, "I'm sorry."
Actually ashamed.
He says, "I'm ashamed for calling out evil on my side." In other words, he's saying it was wrong. I shouldn't have done it.
What a pussy.
I should not have criticized my own side. That's what he's saying right here. Listen to him.
But I'm actually ashamed that I did a show where we were talking about it, because there's two reasons that I say something like that. And if I'm totally honest with you, and I try to be, I'm not so sure I had the best of intentions in making that video. The first reason that I talked about not liking what the FCC was doing, and I still don't, the first reason is because that's honestly how I feel. I do feel that way. Now, it's not as bad as I talked to our great friend, by the way, the Chad of the week, Mr. Ubercross, talked to him, and he's like, actually, it's not as clear cut as you think. But nonetheless, even if it's within the legal framework, I'm not the biggest fan of that.
That's code, by the way, that it's within the legal framework. But
forget about that for those of you listening. I'm not talking about whether you agree with me or disagree with me that what the FCC did was right or wrong. That's not the point here. Forget about all that. My point is I'm ashamed that I did a video talking about it. And the reason I did a video talking about it was two reasons. One, because it's what I really think. And what good would I be if I'm not telling you, when it comes to serious matters, my actual honest to goodness opinions on it? I hope that no matter what you think, if anything, I'm too transparent. I too much have my heart in my sleeve sometimes. I'm too emotional sometimes. I think that that's why people tune in. You might think that I'm wrong, but at least I'm telling you what I think. And I fight with my audience a lot. Remember the week where Trump bombed Iran and I was like, this is fucking bad. My audience massively disagreed with me. Then the Epstein file stuff, and a lot of my audience disagreed with me, blaming Trump, saying how he mishandled that. So I did tell you the truth of what I thought about the FCC story. So then why would I be ashamed? Well, because there's another reason that I talked about that story. And it's shameful. And it's maybe why I just told you in that this is getting real meta here. It's maybe why I just told you I still disagree with the FCC. Maybe even reintroducing that there falls into this. I did that because I want to be able to later, when people say, Rob, you're a hypocrite. Now that the Democrats are cracking down on free speech again, that they're in charge, and you're complaining, you didn't say shit all when the FCC cracked down. And I'll be able to say, yeah, I did.
That was a lot of wasabi. My bad.
By the way, there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with partially being incentivized not to be called out for being a hypocrite, for actually being a hypocrite, right? And it's very telling that Rob's mind goes there because this is something that he tries to deploy. Now, it isn't true that just because you don't talk about something publicly that you don't feel a certain way, but it does give you some more credence to come into a battle where someone is putting your character an issue, because it's really not super specifically relevant oftentimes.
Yeah, I'm not going to steal Pisco's thunder. I'm going to let him keep talking. But yeah, Rob's apologizing for trying to be consistent in principle publicly. What a crazy fucking thing. They gave me so much shit for saying, like, yeah, what Vosh did was bad, but I'm not going to make content about it. They gave me so much fucking shit for that. Here's him doing it in reference to a violation of the First Amendment. Fucking amazing. Fucking amazing.
Under these conversations, unless you're putting someone's character an issue, or the topic becomes, are you a bad person? Are you a hypocrite? And that's also what Rob likes to do. He doesn't like having a conversation about the actual topic, which is there a double standard, or did they do something wrong? It's, are you a bad person? Did you condemn this? And so I think it's very...
I need to stop accepting that too. Whenever they start doing the personal criticisms, I need to say, hey, we need to talk about a topic or we're not talking.
Revealing. That's one of Trump's... my bad.
No.
It's one of...
Av Racing says, you see the Trump Epstein statue someone put up in DC? No, but based.
Rob's initial thoughts. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, hey, I believe this, and also I don't want people to think that I'm a hypocrite and I'm only willing to call out bad things on the other side. I think those are both fine incentives. And so I don't know why you would be ashamed of it, but keep listening.
When the left comes back, I'll be able to say, I stuck to my principles, and that's shameful.
Why is it shameful to publicly stick by your principles, Rob? Please articulate that to me.
Shameful, he says.
For real, it is. Because I should no longer give two shits what the left says. At all. At all. And my personal ego wanting to be able to use this as part of some debate in the future is fucking shameful. That I didn't say what's morally right, which is go fuck yourself.
Really? So don't say what you feel. I'm ashamed. This doesn't even make sense. So you're ashamed that part of your rationale was to be consistent and to appear to be consistent in front of an audience.
Well, Christian Vlaris, so you said there was no government involvement in the Hunter Biden laptop story, according to Matt Taibbi. There was just a general warning about potential foreign attacks. Yeah, but my frustration with this is that there was like, is it the Alpine group, something like that? The Everest group, Alpine group, Hunter Biden, NGO misinformation exercise. It might not be the Alpine group. It might be like Everest or something. But there was like an NGO, Hunter Biden NGO misinformation exercise. So the thing that pisses me off about this is that they had the laptop, like the FBI had the laptop for like 2 years. And I think they said publicly at some point that we're not going to investigate this because it's a election year. So we're not even going to look at it, which I think is fucking cringe. But they were trying to avoid the appearance of bias. But 2 years prior to the actual election, there was like a hack of Burisma's private servers. And there was an NGO in the United States who actually ran like a misinformation exercise. I forget what they're called, but it has something to do with like trees. It's like Alpine, Everest, some shit like that. And so they actually ran an exercise 2 years prior to the election, effectively saying that Russians were going to try to spin a disinformation campaign as a part of an October surprise in reference to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Now, they're free to do whatever the fuck they want. Like, I don't, ultimately, if they're free actors or not malevolent, et cetera, then they can do whatever the fuck they want. But you can't tell me that it doesn't stink of pro-Democrat bias when you have social media people and law enforcement people coming to participate in an anti-misinformation campaign where the topic that they pick specifically is alleged Hunter Biden corruption, simultaneous to the laptop being in the FBI's control. You can say, oh, we're so cute, we're so ooh-woo, nobody knew, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. I'm saying it's fucked up. All right? So if you don't agree with me, that's totally fucking fine. I don't really care. I have my feelings on it. I've thought about it for 2 years. Trump is worse. Okay? Trump's worse. Hear that. If you're like, no, Connor, you must concede to the liberal cult. Hunter Biden is amazing. We should all be on our knees for Biden, spiritually and sexually. It's not going to happen, all right? Not going to happen.
Presumably, appearing to be consistent in front of an audience would make the audience more apt to agree with you and give you a stronger position and achieve your political goal. You're ashamed that you told the truth about what you actually feel. And by the way, I saw some of what he was saying in that other stream, and he was downplaying a lot, even as he did in this introduction, where he's like, "It's not that big."
No. I don't agree with this, Landon Stewart. I don't agree with you. Yes, I totally agree about the COVID and election thing, but the problem is that I think we agree on this. Twitter wasn't influenced by the government to do it because there was plenty of times. No, okay? The government was influential in their decision. Do you know why? Because the government probably said, hey, in reference to election misinformation, this is actually a crime. You need to crack down on this shit. That way, like, we don't have people fucking up the election. It's actually serious that people know where they can vote. So the government had influence by telling them that it was a crime. You can say that's justified, but that's influence. Same thing with COVID misinformation. The government said, hey, people lying about COVID is going to get other people injured and killed. So while we can't tell you what you can and can't publish on your websites, we still think that it's in the public interest to crack down on misinformation. You can say that the social media companies could have told them to fuck off, but the social media companies didn't. And maybe that's a good thing, but you can't say that it's not influence. Influence is me talking to you. I'm trying to convince you that my worldview is correct. Just because you have the ability to tell me to fuck myself does not mean that I am not trying to use my influence in order to change your mind. Okay? So no, stop using sanitized language. Just say that it's good. Just say that social media cracking down on COVID misinformation and election misinformation, particularly in retrospect, was good and we're square. Okay? Okay?
A deal, and some people say it's legal, and so he was already being incredibly charitable to the Trump administration. But he's saying it's shameful to want to have stronger grounding and a stronger defense for these debates in front of an audience. Why is that shameful?
Sorry, real quick. Boss Axe's my beef with the COVID info was that they were saying people like me who got the same treatment as Joe Rogan, but got it given it to me by the VA were deniers and are causing people to get killed. Lol. Well, right. And I don't know if you got the monoclonal antibodies or whatever, but there was like experimental treatments like the monoclonal, I don't even know if I'm saying that word correct, but the monoclonal antibodies and the ivermectin and this, that, the other, and opening up somebody's lungs and shooting UV light into it in order to disinfect it of viral material. I don't fucking know, dude. But there was like 10 different treatments at that time that everybody was arguing about was more effective than supportive treatment on a respirator. And so the social media argument at the time was just don't talk about it. Like, don't even talk about it, even if you're a doctor. Like, even if you're a doctor, just be a doctor. Don't talk about it on the internet. So I don't know if that's good. I don't know if it's bad, but I do kind of know that the anti-vaxxers, they were all predicting that everybody who got vaxxed was going to fucking die. And as far as I know, more unvaxxed people died than vaxxed people. Like, maybe more vaxxed people died in reference to the sheer amount of people who got vaxxed. But I think the lethality, if you're unvaxxed, was substantively higher based off of post-incident statistics.
Probably if you think that your appearance on other shows might convince 1, 2, 3, 4 people on the fence, you would want to have the strongest possible argument. and you can ground out your, it's not necessarily ego. Maybe there's a little bit of ego there. Part of it is your advocacy. You don't want to be a hypocrite. Part of the reason why Fire and all these advocacy orgs want to be consistent in their criticisms, because they don't want to be accused of having some kind of bias, and they want to have an understanding among their supporters and among the public that they're consistent and have principles. So I'm not seeing why you should be ashamed of this, but you see what he's going with. He's basically saying the left are all animal bullshit assholes, and so I don't want to give ground at all to the left, even when I agree with the conclusion. What does this sound like to you?
Well, AK Batisoy says Twitter also banned Trump, but didn't ban other leaders from non-democratic countries. Well, yeah, you know, Trump did this little thing where he kept claiming that the election was stolen despite not having evidence, and then he created a riot that almost had like members of Congress injured by the riot, injured and potentially killed by the riot. So, you know, I get it. Like the Shah of Iran is still on fucking Twitter, but you know, they can't control Twitter. Twitter can't really control what the Shah of Iran does, whereas they're an American company, they do have some level of control over what an American person does. So, you know, you might see it as bad or unprincipled. I think they were trying to do the right thing, even if they're idiots. All right. I'm still working on my drawing and eating sushi. So take it away, Pisco.
By the way, does this argument sound familiar from Rob? I don't want to say what I actually believe about a topic, even though I do condemn it and I do think it's wrong. I don't want to say it because the other side are such bad faith pieces of shit, even though it would help me help my cause and reflect my true beliefs to say it.
You want me to talk about the FCC? You want me to talk about Jimmy Kimmel? Well, people are still protesting Charlie Kirk's vigils, and he hasn't even had a service yet.
You want me to call out government censorship? You want me to call out government authoritarianism when there was a tragedy? Yes, Rob. Yes, that's the best time to call out authoritarianism. These are the first guys that will give away your rights in response to a tragedy. These would be the first people after 9/11 to say, yes, government, step on me harder. Yeah, calling out government corruption when emotions are high and when there's abhorrent behavior by one side or by what you perceive to be one side, I think it's frankly inverted the overwhelming misconduct that we're talking about here. But assuming you take on Rob's worldview, that is probably the best time to call out overreaches by the government and authoritarianism. And it's the same argument. Yeah, why should I talk about XYZ when there's a genocide in Gaza? Why should I talk about the news on a news show? Why should I move on when we should just be, doing live 24/7 coverage of Charlie Kirk's casket? That's what would be better.
Well, Democrats can't even vote against honoring him in Congress. Well, people like AOC are smearing his name today as we speak.
No smear, no smear, no smear. Honest words from AOC. Yeah, I should be upholding my principles even when other people are being meanie pantses to Charlie Kirk. Yeah, we actually do expect that, dude. That's what it means to be principled. That's what it means to be principled.
And you want me to spend 1 second about Jimmy Kimmel? Fuck you.
And that's all he has. Spite. This is spite-driven, unprincipled behavior. Fuck you. I'm not going to call out my own corruption. I'm not going to call out evil on my own side because you guys are making fun of Charlie Kirk. Then you're no better than the people that you accuse of being shills, Rob. You're basically suggesting I'm not going to call out my own side because you guys are the worst. You're a bad person, Murray, laughing at me, having me on your show. You are no better than the people you accuse of being Democratic dick sucks. You're basically admitting the same exact shit. I'm not going to call out my own side, the corruption on my own side, because fuck you. You smeared Charlie Kirk. So I won't be consistent. So I'm not going to say my principles.
That's what I should have said. I don't give a fuck what these people think about me in the future. Fuck them. And I think that someone put it better than me.
Fuck you
and
too,
I'd like
Rob.
to play the video.
And guess who he's going to play right now? Guess who Rob Noerr is about to play right now? And listen to the words of who Rob says had it best, right? Let's see how he characterized that. I think someone said it better. Let's see.
And I think that someone put it better than me.
So someone is about to put it better than how Rob just put it. So whatever you're about to see is.
And by the way, okay, so I'm just giving it away because Pisco, I'm verbose, but Pisco is being super fucking verbose right now. It's Gavin McInnes. And for those of you who didn't catch it, Pisco debated Gavin McInnes with Tim Pool IRL, and then he cornered them on Jeffrey Epstein and said, hey, Donald Trump hung out with Jeffrey Epstein for 3 decades. There's this, I don't even know if he brought up the letter, but there's this released letter of Donald Trump writing his pedophile best friend. How do you guys feel about the fact that he's not releasing the Epstein files and your president is probably somebody who raped 14 to 17-year-old girls? And you know what Gavin McInnes' joke was? Well, they were almost of age. That was Gavin McInnes' joke. He was like, oh, well, they were almost 18, so I don't give a shit. Think about that. He's a married man. He tried to cheat on his wife with Lauren Southern. For those of you who didn't see it, Lauren Southern had a documentary done about her, and she was driving around with some journalist immediately after having a conversation with Gavin McInnes, and Gavin McInnes called her and propositioned her for an affair on camera. So fuck that. Fuck Gavin McInnes. Tried to cheat on his wife. He doesn't care that Donald Trump, allegedly raped 14 to 17-year-old girls. He makes a joke out of it when he can. And he's a hypocritical piece of shit. And Rob is using him as a positive example of someone whose rhetoric and perspective he wants to emulate. I'm sorry, what's conservative about that? What's socially conservative about that? Fucking nothing is the answer.
A better synthesis, a better summary for what he just said, right? So just to be clear, he said that whatever's coming now, he's about to show you something better than what he just said. So you're watching an even better, a more emphatic, more reflective, better phrased version of what Rob is trying to get at. This is the upgraded version of it. And who do you think?
Silver says it's not crazy if you take into account that he's a FFR. I think the first one is about his weight. I think the second one is a profane word. I think the third one is an ableist slur.
He's going to play.
You always take a gamble playing this guy. But I've been a big fan for a long time. Gavin McInnes.
What we did in canceling Jimmy Kimmel is hypocritical. We talk about free speech, and then when someone says something we don't like, we cancel them. It's not consistent with our values. And I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. You kicked me in the balls, I gouge out your fucking eyes. I'm not doing some Dave Portnoy explanation on why this is consistent. It's hypocritical. We're hypocritical. This is a fucking war. Fuck you. You got me fired, I get you fired. It's like I say to my daughter's boyfriend, you make her cry, I make you cry. We're making you cry now, motherfuckers. This is who post-Molly Jimmy needs to suffer. And we're making him fucking suffer. And we're going to make them all suffer. The gloves are off. We're hypocrites now. You made your bed. You're fucking lying in it. And other colloquialisms such as that.
That is 100% the right attitude to have.
It is 100% the right attitude to have to be a hypocrite.
Yeah. Sorry, Rob. You're a fucking piece of shit, bro. You're a fucking piece of shit. So what I've done is I've highlighted why I think that if you're a constitutional conservative, Donald Trump and his administration and the MAGA movement have fucking betrayed the Constitution of the United States. So if you're a constitutional conservative and you support Donald Trump, I think you're full of shit. Okay? The reason being is because in reference to the First Amendment, Donald Trump has consistently tried to use threats of civil litigation and criminal penalties to silence his enemies. And as recently as this month, the FCC chair said that he was going to look into regulatory violations for ABC because they dared air Jimmy Kimmel, probably being incorrect about a topic, but not knowingly lying, which is constitutionally protected speech. And they threatened ABC in order to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. Fuck that. If you think that community notes or election misinformation or COVID misinformation, and the government supporting social media platforms voluntarily, but at government encouragement, limiting the free expression of American citizens, and you don't think that this is a worse violation, you're fucking coping. The other issue was that Donald Trump was the one who banned bump stocks and said, in reference, I think it was after the Vegas shooting, but it could have been after another one. He said, in reference to red flag laws, he said, take the guns, do due process second. Now, I actually believe in red flag laws. I think that they could be used as a viable tool. But if you're a Second Amendment absolutist, how do you not view that as him slapping you in the face? How do you not view Republicans who had the opportunity, in order to go through whatever like reconciliation shit that they did, they had the opportunity to make silencers and short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns no longer federally prohibited, and they didn't do it. So if you're a gun guy, you should view MAGA as betraying of your interest. Now, for the Fourth Amendment, people are right to be secure in their person's papers and you need to have a warrant or you need to have an exigent circumstance in order to detain people. Donald Trump has eliminated that for Hispanic people within California and within the southwestern United States. If you look like you're illegal, you can be detained by ICE, which is very clearly a violation of the Fourth Amendment. And not only that, I can't wait, because they've already detained citizens. I can't wait for one of those citizens to get a massive GoFundMe to sue the federal government for a violation of their Fourth Amendment rights and for them to win big. Cannot wait for it to fucking happen. The Fifth Amendment is due process. That's obviously been violated in reference to plenty of people who were deported to Sakut and deported to El Salvador and deported to South America. Cruel and unusual punishment. Not only is MAGA currently gleeful that people without due process who are accused of being members of gangs but have not been proven to be members of gangs at all, like Andre Hernandez Romero, were deported to effectively Guantanamo Bay, El Salvador, also known as Sakut, where they were tortured and sodomized. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Another cruel and unusual punishment is taking people who are suspected migrants and sending them to Alligator Alcatraz, a place where you are gleeful about the fact that they're going to be in unair-conditioned buildings. They're going to have 8 people to a room. They're going to be hanging out behind chain link fence. They're going to be constantly getting bit by mosquitoes because it's the frickin' Everglades. And then if they escape, they're going to be eaten by dinosaurs. I would say that's a spiritual violation of the Eighth Amendment. That's not even to mention the fact that we're drone striking random civilian vessels in the Caribbean suspected of drug trafficking, but we don't have the evidence for why these people are drug traffickers. Then when it comes to the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, that's clearly being violated in reference to immigrants. And then the 12th and 22nd Amendment, whenever these I'm getting homophobic. Whenever these sycophants, is a more appropriate term, whenever these sycophants joke about a third term, which half of them are not joking, it would clearly be a violation of the 22nd and 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment of the United States states that the Vice President of the United States cannot be ineligible for the office of the President of the United States. And the 22nd Amendment of the United States states that the President can only serve for 2 terms. And it's specific about that. So when they're trying to get Trump to have a third term, they're trying to circumvent the 12th and 22nd Amendment of the United States. So in my opinion, if you claim to be a constitutional conservative and you are not constantly calling out the excesses and abuses of the Trump presidency, you are not a constitutional conservative. You're a lying, hypocritical piece of shit. I'm on a rant. Got you. All right, I love you. Thank you for the sushi. So you're a fucking hypocritical, lying sack of shit. And if your response to all of this isn't, yeah, Dan, that's kind of fucked up, I'm going to start criticizing the Trump administration. If your response instead is, yeah, but did you think about Obama drone striking Anwar al-Awlaki? Yeah, but did you think about Joe Biden trying to forgive student loans against the will of the Supreme Court of the United States? I think you're a fucking idiot. I think you're a hypocrite. I don't think you understand politics. When I do something bad, that does not mean that you get to do something bad. If I jaywalk, that doesn't mean that you get to shoplift. If I shoplift, that doesn't mean that you get to do your DUI. If I get a DUI, that doesn't mean that you get to get into a DUI car accident. If I get into a DUI car accident, that doesn't mean that you get to do a murder. Okay? It's childish, elementary school thinking that because other people abandon their principles or commit crimes, you get to abandon your principles and commit crimes. Fair? Are we on the same page? I'm going to go ahead and save this one and move into the next way that MAGA violates conservatism. So, constitutional, conservative, MAGA violation. All right. Then, Mr. Pisco, please entertain my audience while I do my next drawing.
That mean? That means Rob is saying, if it's 100% correct, I take that to mean that's his preference. It's his preference that he be a hypocrite. It's the morally correct thing, Rob says, to be a hypocrite. This is an admission. This is what we call a self-report. Rob is saying it's good that we're hypocrites. It's good to act hypocritically. It's good to have hypocritical rhetoric, to be inconsistent. That's what he just said. Is there any coper in the chat who thinks differently? We're just going to hear him this entire thing again. So there can be no doubt. There can be no doubt whatsoever how Rob characterizes this and what Gavin McInnes says.
Better than me. And I'd like to play the
He says the following. He says,
I think that someone put it better than me, and I'd like to play the video.
Gavin put it better than him. Gavin says the following.
Yeah, I just
And
take a gamble playing this guy. But I've been a big
he's a
fan for
huge
a long
fan of
time.
him.
Gavin McInnes.
What we did in canceling Jimmy Kimmel is hypocritical. We talk about free speech, and then when someone says something we don't like, we cancel them. It's not consistent with our values. And I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. You kicked me in the balls, I gouge out your fucking eyes. I'm not doing some Dave Portnoy explanation on why this is consistent. It's hypocritical. We're hypocritical. This is a fucking war. Fuck you. You got me fired, I get you fired. It's like I say to my daughter's boyfriend, you make her cry, I make you cry. We're making you cry now, motherfuckers. This is who post-Molly Jimmy needs to suffer. And we're making him fucking suffer. And we're going to make them all suffer. The gloves are off. We're hypocrites now. You made your bed. You're fucking lying in it. And other colloquialisms such as that.
That is 100% the right attitude to have. That's the attitude to have.
Being a hypocrite. That's the attitude to have. Be a hypocrite. Be hypocritical. Be inconsistent. Don't live up to your principles. That's what Rob says. He is admitting he is a hypocrite. He is admitting that when he talks to you, you can't trust anything he says anymore because he's telling you what he views as ethically good is to be a hypocrite. So Rob just told you, you can't trust a word he says. Why? Because he says it is good to be hypocritical. That's the attitude to have. It's good not to live up to your principles. That's the attitude to have. It's an admission. It's an admission of bad faith. Hypocrisy, knowingly saying things that you don't believe and not upholding a standard of consistency and doing that consciously. Isn't that the definition of bad faith? So we always knew that Rob was a hypocrite. We always knew that Rob was bad faith. But now we have an admission. This is an admission.
I have my feelings. I have my feelings of saying I didn't like the FCC doing that, or I didn't like this thing, or I didn't like that thing. But why does that matter at this point? Who cares? Fuck you.
Who cares about my own feelings regarding government authoritarianism? Isn't that precisely what Rob has been supposedly trying to call out from the left for all these years? Is you didn't call out your own side when it came to authoritarianism. Well, the chickens have come home to roost. That's the poison and toxins, often falsely, I would say, often falsely, that he spewed against other people. And it was a self-report the entire time. The entire time it was a self-report, and now it's laid bare before you. He doesn't want to call out his own side. He wants to cover up for the government corruption and authoritarianism on his own side. It's what he's telling you, verbatim. I just showed it to you. We're going to keep listening to make sure that you don't think that I'm missing out on any important context, but he's essentially saying, yeah, I feel ashamed for calling out the government corruption on my own side. The exact thing he was accusing the left of doing, oftentimes falsely. You cover.
Okay. Next thing. I think Pisco's a little bit too much of a ranter, but I'm guilty of this as well. So Hard to throw stones in glass houses. So this is how I don't think that MAGA is a Burkean conservative movement. Okay. Edmund Burke was an English statesman at the time of the French Revolution. He believed that the French monarchy and the French church and the French government were too brittle because they had never integrated valid criticisms from the public. And as a result, there was a disconnect between the public that they served and the institutions that presently existed. And so because they were not able to reconcile their differences, the progressives and liberals of the days of the Jacobin, the leftists, the left-wingers in French society overthrew the political order and as a result ushered in chaos and bloodshed and destruction. So what Edmund Burke argued is that as a politician, as a person, as a conservative, it is your job to default to existing social institutions like monarchy, like constitutionalism, like elected representation and democracy, because within these institutions is nestled centuries, if not millennia, of wisdom. And no matter how intelligent or how experienced or how wise, you are not wiser than centuries or millennia of subconscious wisdom. However, in order to make sure that these institutions do not become so brittle that they collapse, you have to integrate liberal, left-wing, and progressive criticism of existing institutions. So as an example, we brought up in reference to police reform on a Prime Kai panel recently, we brought up 8 can't wait. Okay, 8 can't wait police reform. This is an example of a progressive or liberal movement to try to do police reform, okay? Ban chokeholds and strangleholds. This is in general a good idea, but what this should say instead is ban chokeholds and strangleholds except in deadly force encounters. And what I mean by that is, let's say that there's a guy and he has a knife, but you tackle him from behind and he has a knife under his belly. You can't reach your gun. Your gun's been knocked away from you or something like that. And the guy is currently trying to pull his knife out from underneath his belly in order to stab you with the knife. Should you be willing and able to choke him out in order to avoid you getting stabbed? Absolutely. Now, should you chokehold a fat, obese man with heart failure who's selling loose cigarettes on the side of Staten Island? That was Eric Garner a decade ago. No, that's not a deadly force scenario, so you shouldn't choke him. So again, this is a liberal or progressive suggestion that's kind of fucking stupid, but there's a steel man of it that we could do that actually makes sense. Require de-escalation. I could do this all day, but I'll just do one more. Require de-escalation. Okay, you shouldn't require de-escalation because if a mass shooter with an AR-15 starts blasting civilians in front of you, then you shouldn't have to be like, hey, sir, can you please put the gun down and stop murdering people? Because that would be de-escalation, right? No, you should be able to pull your pistol and blast that dude off of the face of the earth. But is require de-escalation training, would that be a good step? Absolutely. And so as a result, you can see that there's like stupid shit mixed in here, but there's a steel man that would actually be good for society. Okay. Are you tracking the concept so far? So if I had examples of how MAGA are not Burkean conservatism or how Trump is not Burkean conservative, I would say that the Trump movement is largely socially regressive. They're trying to get back to like 1950s America culturally. They're trying to get back to the Christian nationalism of 1950s, 1960s America. Donald Trump himself is a populist who doesn't support the Constitution of the United States. I think that's easily proven by my previous graph of all of his violations of the Constitution of the United States. He tried to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power via the false elector scheme in the January 6th riot. That's just true. He did not defer to the Republic or its electoral processes. He did not attempt police reform during the Black Lives Matter movement. Instead, he just thought that an authoritarian crackdown would be better. He's gutted federal institutions like the NIH, DOE, IRS, FBI, and DOD. And by the way, that's not to say that these things couldn't have been reformed, but that's to say that though he didn't approach it from a reformist perspective or an incrementalist perspective, he approached it with a fucking blowtorch. That's not Burkean. Reverted America's world on the stage. He didn't ask why America is the world police. He just said we shouldn't be the world police, and then he yanked the carpet out from the world order. Make these, and in my opinion, he's made these institutions more brittle and more likely to implode than a Burkean conservative would say that's the antithesis of what you want. You are making society worse. You are making civil conflict more likely. And so what I submit to you, my 60% liberal chat, my 40% conservatarian chat, is that the MAGA movement and Trump are not Burkean. Back to Pisco while I draw you another map.
Covered up, you cheered on the government corruption, government authoritarianism on your own side.
Oh.
He's telling you, yeah, I do that, or to the extent I don't do it, I'm ashamed of myself. So you can't believe a word this guy says. Not a single word this guy says.
I'll talk to my friends in chat. I'll talk to my friends in real life about what I think. I'll talk to my friend on the phone about what I think about the FCC.
But not publicly.
But I don't care what any one person on the left thinks. I thought about this a lot when I started. I talked about...
And just to be clear, it's not just the people who are demanding it. I don't want you to read into this. Well,
this one will be
just
easy.
means he doesn't want the left wing to demand that of him. He's not going to respond to the left wing demanding that of him. By the way, map that on 100% to the position of Destiny and DGG on the condemnation. He has no basis to criticize that for someone saying, I refuse to condemn in front of you until you guys clean up your act, because that appears to be your position. But that's not just what he's saying here. He's saying he's ashamed not to have had that FCC thing demanded of him from the left. He's ashamed on his own stream to even have talked about it, right? He's ashamed to have talked about it on his own stream, not on Piers Morgan where he was pushed. He's ashamed to have done it on his own stream and to have had a conversation about the government corruption. And this is, I think, able to be taken two ways. Either one, this is him announcing what has always been in his heart. I think that's probably true. He doesn't want to talk about the government corruption on his own side, and he always tries to downplay it to the point of absurdity. Or two, he's trying to dodge debates on government's corrupt actions under Trump term 2, which is what he's trying to do. He doesn't want to actually have a conversation about all the horrible shit Trump is doing, and he's a coward.
This little yesterday. When I started my channel, I had this big idea. I remember saying one of my first live streams, on this channel, you don't get banned in the chat, unless it's like really egregious. And, I don't ban people on social media and stuff. I'll ban everyone now.
I'll ban everyone.
I don't give a shit.
Okay. This, I don't care about this criticism. I keep people who are critics of mine in chat who are actually presenting ideas. But if you're a rude, smug bitch to me, I'm going to ban you. It just is what it is. This stream is to communicate political ideas. It is to break down current events. It is to watch recent dramas. It is to have fun. But it's also a place where I already have 50 to 100 people that I actually like who come and hang out most days. I already have 150 people plus watching in general. I already have my ideas that I'm pretty, well established on. I don't have any problems if you criticize my ideas or criticize me. What I care about is whether or not you're being an insulting, smug piece of shit who's capable of taking on new information. Because I know a lot. I've studied a lot. I've traveled a lot. I've experienced a lot. And so I want to share my knowledge. So if you are unreceptive to my knowledge and you're calling me a twat, you're going to get banned. But this one was actually fairly easy for environmental conservative. I think it's actually, I even forgot one. I forgot about the windmills, cutting the funding for alt energy and not are researching and developing fission, fusion, and what was the other one? There's a new one. What's the new nuclear energy? There was one that, thorium. Okay, so Donald Trump is not an environmental conservative. He cut the EPA, he cut OSHA, which I know isn't directly related, but it deals with safety regulations, cut enforcement of pollution, deregulated energy production, which you can argue is good, but it's not environmentally conservative. Appointed a Department of the Interior rep who tried to sell hundreds of millions of acres for resource exploitation and land development. That happened within the past 2 months, and the only reason why it didn't go through was because so many rural conservatives were pissed off that they were trying to sell federal land that they rioted until the Department of the Interior was ordered not to do it. And by the way, they might have still done it on the low. They might have still like I haven't heard shit about it. So they might have still like snuck off and sold millions of acres. But I know that they had to draw back their plan substantively. But that's who he appointed to be Department of the Interior, or the guy who's in charge of federal public lands. Then he cut the funding for alternative energy projects, and he's not funding research and development into fission, fusion, and thorium reactors. So again, not an environmental conservative. MAGA and Donald Trump can fuck themselves in reference to this topic. Trump are not envirocons. Easy mind map. I'm just holding on to it that way. If Rob ever comes on stream and he's like, "You're a hypocrite. MAGA is actually conservative. You're not conservative," I'm gonna tell him to eat a dick, and I'm gonna show him all my drawings.
I probably banned 200 people on Twitter here.
I don't do that, by the way, guys. You know that. I keep my haters around. We got all the haters. He said, "I'll ban you. I don't give a shit." I've been radicalized by Charlie Kirk's assassination. Now I ban everybody. Now I don't uphold my principles.
Sorry, I'm super far behind in chat. But Wordsmith Andy says, the Hunter Biden laptop story was super important that I will never vote for Hunter Biden's penis. True. Christian Blair says, I've been told by you numerous times that I have 3,000 IQ, therefore I believe I am right. True. Grassroots, you have to feel it out with varies wildly by company. True. Pashy says, listen, he has a huge cock. That is a compelling reason. Yep, you guys are all gay. I get it. Sacred's no, but what if Hunter lets you shoot his 5K gun? Well, then maybe we can be friends. I wouldn't vote for him for president, but I would at least go shoot the gun, right? Landon says, that's fair. I was more talking about Rob's entire narrative about the government using Twitter to destroy right-wing voices. Word count on that chat is fucking up what I'm saying, though, but I agree with everything you've said. We're square. Okay, thank you, Landon Stewart. I appreciate you not spurging out on me. I will try not to spurg out on you. AK Batasui says, Twitter executives and workers were 90% plus progressives. I'd say there's a high chance they were doing it to shield the Bidens. Sure. Brian TV says, Polymarket just said that Biden admins pressure YouTube to censor some of its users. Did the Biden admin practice censoring its people? No idea. I need to use the restroom in a minute. Christian Blair says, yeah, fuck CNN and whoever developed that video of Joe Rogan. Dude is a conspiracy-brained R-slur, but that shit propagandized so many fucking people against the media and establishment. Yeah, for monoclonal antibodies, right? That was a thing where he actually went through like a semi-recommended but partially experimental treatment program, and it ended up being like monoclonal antibodies actually ended up being one of the things that worked. If that's what we're talking about, I agree. Bossack says, them banning Trump, in my opinion, made it worse. It added fuel to what he was saying. It's just like Charlie Kirk right now. Arthurs can't stop celebrating. It empowers the populist movement. Sure. Silver says, can we get a yes, government, step on me harder soundboard or dono sound? Sure. And we'll make it a Japanese voice. AK Batasui says the medical associations were supposed to only give recommendations and doctors were supposed to inform their patients, but the medical associations were canceling doctors. Sure. Sure. All right. Just one or two more. It's a psychic damage marathon. Every day is a psychic damage marathon on the Counterpoint stream. 575 GTC Ferrari says, please tell me that's why she was chilling with Destiny. What? Because Lauren Southern was Destiny's psychological caretaker? Maybe. Yeah, Weirdsmith Alex is conserving pedo rings. Yeah, based. So true. Yeah. Kyle says, Rob, listen up, liberals. My feelings are hurt. So true. True. Rob with a B says, Rob values loyalty to the social category of conservative more than any principle of conservatism. I think all of his arguments are consistent with that goal. He is a socialite. Yeah. Yup. And unfortunately, my parents raised me to read and to think. What an L. I should have been like 80 IQ and just been like watching other people's content and being like, ha 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 ha, nice. And then I would be a fucking multimillionaire. I could have been the greatest Asmongold clone ever, but my parents taught me how to read, so I'm fucked. I'm fucked to actually think and suffer like an idiot. Let's pull up. What's the next one after that? Where's my rings? Where's my sacred rings? There they are. Neocon. This one's also going to be super easy. It's just going to be Trump retreated from the fucking world. Bad Bunny Max says, Connor, why are you obfuscating on the Second Amendment legislation and the OBBB? Suppressors and SBRs are no longer taxed, and the Republican strategy leaves the entire NFA up for litigation because I didn't know those details. All I knew that was that Second Amendment people were super fucking pissed because they didn't repeal SBRs and silencers altogether. Now, not being taxed is based. I'll admit that that's based. But Yeah, I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I just knew lots of Second Amendment people got their panties in a twist because they didn't get everything they wanted. Solo Frosty says, what's up, Connor in chat? True. JW says, spitting facts clip this time. True. I'm on a rant. True. All right, just a couple more. Dank Brandon's, it's actually worse than that with alligator Alcatraz. Gators don't actually mess with humans than crocs, but most everyone who watches Naked and Afraid knows how to find and make gators hook and line based. All right. Philip Coffee for 5 says, I'm an hour behind, but I swore off octopi years ago because of their intellect, and now you tell me squid sushi is off limits too? Unsubscribe. Yeah, I made a lot of people upset. I just got here. What was that chart for? Restart the stream. No, fuck you, buddy. Watch it as a VOD. All right. I'm going to go use the restroom again because I was in the hospital a month ago for not using, for having a stomach issue. So I'm going to let Pisco entertain you. I will be back momentarily in order to continue my drawings. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I parasocially love you, and thank you for all the support. Seriously. Thank you, Philip Coffee, and thank you, Barry, for becoming a new member. We've had around 24 people support the stream financially today. I parasocially love you, and thank you. Be right back.
Principles. Now I'm ashamed when I talk about what I believe if it goes against the government. In other words, he's literally a government bootlicking shill. He's admitting it to you. I feel bad that I criticized Trump. I should have just kept my mouth shut. In some respect, he is upholding the ideal of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, who was a shameless propagandist. Charlie Kirk, who was a shameless government bootlicking shill. So in some sense, you can say he's upholding Charlie Kirk's most fervent ideals, which is to trust and worship power at all times and under all circumstances. That's consistent. But he's admitting to you, I feel bad for criticizing Big Brother. I feel bad that I vocalized my dislike. And keep in mind, he was downplaying to the point of absurdity the true scope of the authoritarian overreach here. Even the little bit that he was willing to say, I don't really like it. I think it's horrible. That's what he said. He feels ashamed for it. So it's not just that the demand was made from the left. It's that he brought it up at all. He's telling you he's a shameless government bootlicking shill, that that's good, that he wants to do that, that in fact, Gavin McInnes said it better than anyone else could. He said, yes, it's hypocritical. Yes, we're hypocrites. And what does Rob say? That's the exact attitude to take. That is the attitude to take. That's what Rob said. You can't trust a word this guy says because he's telling you he'll be inauthentic. He's telling you he's going to, unnaturally withhold his criticisms of the ruling government. He's telling you that the right attitude to take is one of hypocrisy.
Do not give a shit. They'll look you right in the face and they'll lie to you. They'll celebrate your death. You see all these people think, oh, be careful. These people saying that they should separate from us. Fuck you. Go away. Go away from us. Be gone. There are lines I will not cross. I will not advocate for personal violence. I still have my theories on what I think should be done.
So he has lines that he won't cross. And that line, as explained, is the use of private violence for political ends, or advocating for private violence for political ends. By private violence, I mean violence on behalf of non-government officials. That's his line. But one line, the implication there, and what he's going to say right now is, one of those lines is not government corruption, that I'm willing to abide by and keep quiet on government corruption and overreach. That the line for him really is private violence. That's the line. But it doesn't include things like government overreach, government corruption, and government censorship. He's saying it.
I still have my theories on what I think should be done. A huge percentage of the party that I disagree with wants me dead.
Really?
What am I going to do? Complain about?
They don't know who you are.
Things my side does. I'll still talk to lefties that I feel like, but I'm just over it.
So nothing's changed, he says. He's just saying, I'm going to have discretion about who I talk to. And I'm just going to, I'll also talk to lefties when I want to, which is the same as before. Like, this is the problem. There's at least an inconsistency, or at least the appearance of an inconsistency, when you're like, well, now I've changed. Now I'm only going to talk to lefties when I want to. Okay. Weren't you always doing that? So nothing has changed, right? Like, you're still going to just talk to lefties when you want. So, but I think this is a signal to his heart, which is, I don't want to take these uncomfortable debates about government corruption under Trump unless they already agreed with me. But even then, right, I don't want to have a conversation where I talk about the bad stuff that Trump is doing. That's what the implication here is 100% obvious. He's saying, I'm ashamed that I brought up the government corruption, government overreach, authoritarianism by Trump, I'm ashamed by that. And then he says, I'll still debate them when I want to. The implication being,
I'm just going to respond to chat a little bit because I know you've been hanging out with Pisco for too long. I don't think Kimmel was lying at all. I think it was pretty clear that he wasn't trying to claim the shooter was MAGA. Rather, he was talking about MAGA drive to instantly label the shooter as a leftist. Sure. And who gives a shit? There was some fucking information going around for why he might be a groiper. If Jimmy Kimmel genuinely believed that and he was just mistaken, guess what? Free speech protects your right to be wrong. You're allowed to be wrong. Okay. Now, real quick shill, just because we're kind of getting towards the tail end. I have to leave in probably 10 to 20 minutes in order to pick up my son. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. We were more than 150 all day today, even though we weren't covering Destiny sex drama. I think that's pretty based. I parasocially love you, and thank you for being here. So, all right, I'm going to... Yeah, Zombie Joe, you on Twitter got me fired for saying the N-word. I'm going to send the government to get you fired. Yep. To be unprincipled is to be anti-American. I mean, Khalil, I agree with you, but truth be told. All right. Sorry. Wife sent an important text. To be unprincipled is to be anti-American. Yes and no. Plenty of Americans are unprincipled, and so as a result, I think it's pretty normal. So, anyways, Tristan Clark says, because you were mean, I no longer care about the First Amendment. Straight up. Rob should be disinvited from every left-wing panel again. Fucker should stick to the Crucible. Yeah, it's just making discourse worse. So you admit your paint spills are godlike? Yes or no? My paint spills are above average. They're not godlike. I have a paint studio, Mastermind Models and Miniatures, out of Huntsville, Alabama, who's a sponsor of the Warhammer 40K channel. Their average painter makes my painting look like dog shit. Oh, if you're talking about Microsoft Paint, I think I'm an above average Microsoft Paint user as well. Test Dummy Human says, Counterpoints Politics, can we burn a Discord link? Yeah, sure. I'll do that. I'll do that, and then I'll try to draw the neoconservative stuff real quick.
I don't want to debate them on this. Because he knows it's untenable unless you're a hypocrite, which he is, and which he says is good.
Here's the rules for radicals.
Oh my God.
I'm Saul Alinsky. 1, power is not only what you have, but what your enemy thinks you have. Power is derived from two main sources, money and people. Have-nots must build power from flesh and blood. Rule 2, never go outside.
Here's the Discord link. I just posted it in chat. And then I just wanted to rewind for the money and blood quote
that Trump is doing. That's what the signal, the implication here is 100% obvious. He's saying, I'm ashamed that I brought up the government corruption, government overreach, authority.
Wait, Crisper says, all these complaints about Gavin pretty much map 1-to-1 to Destiny, except for Gavin didn't nuke Lauren's career and dox her kid, careful in glass houses. Yeah, Wit. Nice clown PFP, by the way. Yeah, so hold on. Lauren was divorced, and they had a consensual relationship. Now, Destiny didn't cheat on Lauren, in my opinion. Destiny did not fully disclose his relationship with Lauren to Melina. Still fucked up. Don't think it's a 1-to-1 to Gavin, who's supposed to be a conservative. Destiny has always been a polyamorous, polycule sex freak. Okay, Gavin McInnes is supposed to be a proud, married, conservative father. So yeah, I think the hypocrisy in that regard is what I'm pointing to, not the degenerate sexual shit. Now, I'll criticize the degenerate sexual shit as well, but I think it's more the hypocrisy of holding yourself up as some paragon of masculine virtue.
Authoritarianism by Trump, I'm ashamed by that. And then he says, I'll still debate them when I want to. The implication being, I don't want to debate them on this. Because he knows it's untenable.
Bama, why'd you sell it to Dems, bud? Oh, hey, Bama, I made 2 or 3 drawings for you because you're one of the dumbest people in my chat. So here's all the ways in which Donald Trump violated constitutional conservatism, threatening the FCC president and routinely threatening journalists and comedians for criticizing the administration. him doing the banning bump stocks and saying take the guns, due process second. In the Fourth Amendment, you're supposed to be securing your person some papers without a warrant and due process. That doesn't exist for Hispanics in the southwestern United States. They're currently being detained under suspicion of being illegal. For due process, he's already violated that for a shitload of non-Americans and Americans, by the way. He's also deported Americans. Cruel and unusual punishment. They went ahead and sent innocent people to a gulag in El Salvador in which they were tortured and sodomized. Equal protection under the law. He's violated that left, right, and center in reference to mass deportation. And then he's joking about / serious about violating the 12th and 22nd Amendment. That way he can run for a third term. Then with Burkean conservatism, he does not believe in defaulting to institutions, but integrating valid, progressive, and liberal critiques of society so you don't create institutions so brittle that they collapse. If anything, he's a social regressive who has clung to Christian nationalism like a thin coat over his naked stupidity. He's a populist who doesn't support the Constitution of the United States because he tried to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power via the false elector scheme on the January 6th riot. He did not attempt any kind of valid police reform during the Black Lives Matter movement. He's gutted federal institutions like the NIH, DOE, IRS, FBI, and DOD, appointed sycophants to be in charge of him hacking at the federal state. And then he reverted America's role on the world stage, and he's making these institutions more brittle, not better. So Donald Trump, through his actions, has made American cultural collapse more likely, not less. So he's not a Burkean conservatism. Or he's not a Burkean conservative. And then in reference to environmental conservatism, he cut the EPA, he cut OSHA, he cut enforcement of pollution, and he deregulated energy production. He appointed the Department of the Interior representative who tried to sell hundreds of millions of acres for resource exploitation and land development. And he's cutting funding for alternative energy, and he's not researching and developing fission nuclear energy, fusion nuclear energy, or thorium nuclear energy. So he's not environmental conservative either. So I still have 3 other conservatisms that I need to go through in order to point out how Donald Trump is neither a Republican nor a conservative. But with a name like Bama and your consistently 80 IQ dipshit takes in my chat, I have to assume that you're too dumb to actually understand everything I just said. So I expect this to slide off of you like water off of a duck's ass.
Tenable unless you're a hypocrite, which he is, and which he says is good.
Here's the rules for radicals.
Oh my God.
I'm Saul Alinsky.
Yeah, Bud123 says, actually asked an important question. Would the Burkean conservatives be on the side of the redcoats during the American Revolution if they are in favor of preserving the institutions of monarchy? Believe it or not, Edmund Burke was around during the Revolution, and he was a critic of both the crown and the revolutionaries. And he did think that the revolution was ultimately fucked up because it ended with the crown no longer in control of the colonies. He would have preferred to have kept England whole. However, he did see the complaints of the revolutionaries as valid. And so he was like a American revolutionary centrist trying to maintain the crown's control over the colonies, but trying to maintain it through actual like diplomatic negotiation. This is happening, says Pisco points content that shits on Rob Noerr. I don't know. How could it be anything less than fire? True. Yep. There we go. All right. Let's keep it rolling for another minute. Let's see if I can get neoconservatism going.
1, power is not only what you have, but what your enemy thinks you have. Power is derived from 2 main sources, money and people. Have-nots must build power from flesh and blood. Rule 2, never go outside the expertise of your people. It results in confusion, fear,
Evilly Interactive LLC. Do you want to chat about this on stream? Let's talk about it.
feeling secure adds to the backbone of anyone. 3, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Look for ways to increase insecurity, anxiety, and uncertainty. 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. If the rule is that every letter gets a reply, send 30,000 letters. You could kill them with this because no one can possibly obey their own rule, all of their own rules. Rule 5, ridicule is a man's most potent weapon. There's no defense. It's irrational. It's infuriating. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into concessions. Number 6, a good tactic.
I'm only here to monitor what you are saying about a man of God. Okay, you don't want to actually chat? A man of God?
Is one your people enjoy. They'll keep doing it without urging.
He's like Rob, he chooses who to debate. These guys are like the biggest fucking cowards. I'm not going to debate unless you pre-agree with me on all this stuff. I won't debate Soy Pill because he doesn't pre-agree with me on Russiagate. Biggest bunch of snowflake pussies. I've ever met in my
get him,
life.
Pisco.
And come back to do more. They're doing their thing and will even suggest better ones. Rule 7, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Don't become old news. Rule 8, keep the pressure up. Never let up. Keep trying to
Pay me $1 billion zillion, Andrew Wilson. Yeah, you have to pay me thousands of dollars, and you have to pay my friend who got in a crash. You have to, do a donation in your name to this person. Like, Jesus Christ. Pisco won't debate. Who won a debate? Who won a debate? What if I categorically refuse to debate a strong debater? I invite them all the time. I don't like refuse these debates.
do things to keep the opposition off balance. As the opposition masters one approach, hit them from the flank with something new. Rule 9, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Imagination and ego could dream up many more consequences than any activist. Rule 10.
So now he's like fucking doing this rules for radicals thing meme where they're like, this is their plan. Their plan is to make sure that we're not hypocrites. And we have to be hypocrites. Otherwise we Rob is basically just monologuing mantras to himself to justify hypocrisy and bad faith. Just kind of sad to watch. I mean, this is I saw a little bit of this on the way back from something I was doing, and I was like, "What? This is so fucking cringe."
Rule 11, the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. Never let the enemy score points because you're caught without a solution to the problem. Rule 12, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Cut off the support network and isolate the target from sympathy. Go after people and not institutions. People hurt faster than institutions.
Plus, me be a hypocrite.
What we did in canceling Jimmy Kimmel is hypocritical. We talk about free speech.
He plays it a
and then
second
when
time.
someone says something we don't like, we cancel them. It's not consistent with our values. And I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. You kicked me in the balls, I gouge out your fucking
He's
eyes.
nodding. Look at
I'm
him
not doing
nodding.
some Dave Portnoy explanation on why this is consistent. It's hypocritical. We're hypocritical. This is a fucking war. Fuck you. You got
All right. Neoconservative, I got it done. So for neoconservative, fighting for the free world, this is what neoconservatism is. Fight for the free world, Republican democracy, and human rights via soft and hard power internationally to combat the blight of communism and authoritarianism. That is neoconservatism. I would argue that Donald Trump has violated the concepts of neoconservatism by backstabbing Ukraine to sell them out to an authoritarian kleptocratic Russia, sucking up to Arab authoritarians, blank check to Israel to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Now, you could argue that neoconservatives oftentimes are Christian Zionists, so they would probably do something similar. I'll accept that. But I also think that at the core of neoconservatism is a care for human rights. And so as a result, there would probably be some neoconservatives that would just endlessly support Israel. And there's probably some neoconservatives that would actually view an attempt to ethnically cleanse the Gazans as morally unacceptable. So that would actually split the neoconservatives. Fracturing NATO via threats to withdraw from NATO and not honoring Article 5, threatening to invade Greenland and Canada for no discernible benefit, threatening to invade Panama with no discernible benefit, bombing random civilian ships in the Caribbean. Now, you can say that's American military interventionism, but at the same time, I think any neoconservative with their salt would say that blowing up random civilian ships in the Caribbean is not exactly like an intelligent foreign policy. Negotiating a terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan that resulted in 13 dead Marines. You can say that Joe Biden oversaw that, but it was definitely Donald Trump's idea to withdraw. And then trying to yank Trump's troops out of the Middle East and North Africa, which would have further destabilized the region. So Donald Trump is also not a neoconservative and routinely backstabs and doesn't honor Trump. MAGA is not neoconservative. So in my opinion,
got me fired.
I do love talking shit about Rob, but I have to go pick up my kid from school. So I'm going to have to wrap it here. Quick shill reminder, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, and memberships if you got them. But Rob is admitting to being the hypocritical piece of shit that I kind of already knew him to be, because he can't articulate any of these values, but he says that I've betrayed them. I've never betrayed any of these values. I never stopped being loyal to the First Amendment of the United States. I never stopped being loyal to the Constitution of the United States. I never stopped being loyal to the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 8th, the 14th, the 12th, or the 22nd. I never stopped being loyal to these ideas, but MAGA has. Trump has. Trump and MAGA are not loyal to these ideas. I've never not believed in Burkean philosophy, even when I didn't know who Edmund Burke was. As soon as I read Edmund Burke, or a biography about Edmund Burke, because frankly, his autobiographical entries are more historical than they are some kind of prescriptive political analysis. When I read Edmund Burke's biography and read his identifiable political philosophy, I was like, this is me. This is me. This is the way that I think. Defer to what is, defer to religion, defer to government, defer to whatever. However, constantly needle and criticize the institutions that are with good criticism that makes them better and throw out the bad criticism. I believe in this. Donald Trump doesn't. Environmental conservative. It's clear enough. Literally deregulated pollution standards, cut the EPA, cut OSHA, appointed a Department of the Interior representative who tried to sell hundreds of millions of acres for resource exploitation and land development, and cutting the funding and R&D funding for fission fusion and thorium and alternative energy. Neoconservative, in my opinion, Donald Trump has betrayed the free world, and I think he's a fucking piece of shit. And I think anybody that sweeps for him, I don't think they're pieces of shit necessarily, because I can understand why they don't want to be the world police, but I think they're pussies. I think they're fucking pussies, and I think they don't know history. So in conclusion, Rob will never be able to articulate how I violated my virtues or principles in reference to constitutional conservatism, in reference to Burkean conservatism, in reference to environmental conservatism, and in reference to neoconservatism. And we still have 2 or 3 conservatisms left, and I will perfectly articulate how I never betrayed them. I am a real Republican, in my opinion. I actually care about the Republic of the United States. I actually care about the oath that I took as a law enforcement member and a military member. And you know what? I'm fucking sick of these MAGA, populist, pseudo-fascistic, Christian nationalist losers being in charge of my party. So we're going to fight them. We might lose, but we're going to fight them, and we're going to fight them fucking tooth and nail. All right. I parasocially love you guys. I'm going to go take care of my family. Thank you for financial support. Thank you for your viewership. I hope you have a beautiful day.